Hello, my name is Andrew McDonald. Today I will be telling the myth of Santa Claus, an original telling that I have written, as well as performing a mythopoesis analysis upon the story. Beyond the snowy Yukon, far up in the polar north, there is a snowy land where little life seems to come forth. Though near the center of this land, a village lies there, filled with a workshop, houses, and stables, each built with care. Within this village is a man. His name is Santa Claus. Plump and bearded is he. His profession may give some pause. Along with Mr. Claus lives his wife as well, though what her name truly is, she will never tell. With the couple lives a team of elves most loyal, along with 8 reindeer who are steeds most noble. Every year Mr. Claus watches the world with a strong will, seeing everyone's works, those of good and those of ill. Everyone's name goes on a list, one of two, one for those of vice, the other for those of virtue. On the feast of Saint Nick, he collects lists placed in a shoe. They tell him the gifts they want, and other wishes too. To the elves go these requests, and quick to work they go, making toys, clothes, food, and even some mistletoe. Santa and the missus look over the 2 lists twice, ensuring that everyone had a chance to do something nice. At midnight Christmas Eve, Mr. Claus boards his sleigh, huge bag of gifts on hand, ready to go on his way. He calls out his reindeer's names. Hush and closely listen. On Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen. To each house Santa travels, fueled by milk and cookies, delivering packages with ease, making mailmen look like rookies. The nice ones receive exactly what they hoped for and desired. They have done that which is good, and not always required. The naughty ones aren't left with the stocking of an empty hole. Instead, each receives a lump of freshly mined coal. Perhaps with this coal, which can burn a fire most bright, can inspire these wayward ones to begin to do what's right. At dawn, he's finished his job, and then returns up north. As he flies back to his home, a holiday wish he calls forth. To all the people of the world who sleep under this moon so bright, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. So that was a original telling I came up with. It's a bit of a poetic version of it. But looking into the origins of Santa Claus, they are somewhat polygenic. The bulk of the idea of Santa Claus as a man was inspired by Saint Nicholas of Myra. He was a real man. He lived in Turkey. He's a canonized saint in the Catholic Church, and was a bishop actually of Turkey. Where we get the idea of him as Santa Claus is based off of 2 legends. The first is the legend of the dowry. As it goes, there was a man with 3 daughters who were going to be sold into slavery lest they would have a dowry to be married off. And so the night before they're about to be basically sold off, St. Nicholas dropped the dowry down a chimney so that the daughters were spared. The second one, which gives that credence to him being a protector of the children, was he was riding by an inn where a wicked innkeeper had killed and pickled children inside of a barrel, and he resurrected them. And this gave him the image as a protector of the children. And obviously, we still see that influence with the idea of St. Nicholas being an alternative name for Santa Claus you'll hear in music and poetry. But there are 2 others that, at the very least, are similar and could potentially have been inspirations for it. The first is Odin. Odin had a team of elves who made gifts. During his hunt during the season of Yule, he rode around on a sleigh or an 8-legged reindeer. And additionally, the season of Yule, it was a period ran from December 21st to January 1st. And perhaps this was the reasoning for placing the holiday on December 25th, whenever this Germanic region, Scandinavian region, was evangelized with Christianity. Another source, which is peculiar, is the Japanese mythological figure of Budai. He's this plump, jolly man. He carries a sack with the joy of the world, and he's so joyful, and that's why he's portrayed as a very large man. But he's also a caretaker of children. He enjoys the company of them. He enjoys the innocence of children because innocence is joy. Where we get the modern Santa Claus myth, though, really begins in 1822, at least our American interpretation of it, with the poem by Clarence Clement Moore, A Visit from St. Nicholas, though most of us probably know it as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." This gives us the names of the reindeer. It establishes him flying around on a sleigh, landing on the roof. And it's like the baseline. It's where we get the starter set of who Santa Claus is. And where we get the image, as seen over here, with the jolly fat man in a red suit, was from all things the Coca-Cola company, specifically the advertising artist Haddon Sundblom in 1931 created the first of a series of advertisements which portrayed Santa wearing a red coat, something that was never previously specified in any poetry or writings or legends. And like any myth, Santa really is the modern mythic figure. There is no definitive version of the myth of Santa Claus. There are various stories or films made even to this day that each tell a different take of how his story, came about. There's the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. There's the Christmas Chronicles with Kurt Russell. There's a very recent one, Violent Night, with David Harbour. There's Rankin Bass's Santa Claus Coming to Town. And one's personally one of my favorites is Night of the Meek from the Twilight Zone series of the 1950s. And evidently, the Santa Claus myth, though we have the American perspective, which is popular in England as Father Christmas, there are the other international versions. Originally, Father Christmas was less inspired by what we picture the American version of Santa Claus as, but more as an alternative form of the Ghost of Christmas Present, as seen in Dickens' Christmas Carol, as this jolly man who has all these bountiful gifts and always is aware of what people are doing and showing the wicked what the good have, as he shows Scrooge both Bob Cratchit as well as his nephew. Another international form of Santa Claus is Sinterklaas. This is definitely much closer to the Christian ideal of Saint Nicholas. Sinterklaas is portrayed as a bishop. He goes around giving gifts, though, but he also has his servant Krampus, who is somewhat of a demonic figure who punishes and tortures those who have been behaving naughty instead of the American tradition of receiving coal. But probably one of the most unique is that of Italy. Theirs is actually a woman, is Befana, who is a witch who flies around on the Feast of the Epiphany and distributes presents in shoes and stockings. So similar threads of this common mythological ideal. So on a mythopoetic sense, though, why is Santa mythic? What makes him this mythic figure? There is an argument one can make that it's to encourage Christian ideals. The similarities between the holiday of Yule being where Christmas was centralized for evangelical purposes to kind of blend and assimilate with that culture as Christianity was spreading through Europe. And potentially somehow the story of St. Nicholas got integrated with this. It's not super likely, though, because St. Nicholas would have been in the 500s AD. This was, and the evangelization of Europe was much earlier. So, and today Santa Claus is very much a secular figure. So maybe not so much. He encourages good works, which are within the idea of Christian ideals, but they're not exclusive to it. Another argument we can make is he's simply a marketing figure, which is a little shallow. I mean, the Michelin Man doesn't have a set of films, a whole songbook dedicated to him, nor is there a yearly ritual dedicated to just what would simply be an advertising figure. Certainly, I think the mythicity is why he's effective as an advertising figure, but it's not the reason why he's a mythic figure. And a very practical one that maybe suggested is, he's simply a way to distract children. If you don't bother your parents, you're going to get presents from Santa Claus. But this seems too simple. Children are already aware of their actions and their consequences. If they say break a dinner plate, they know they're going to get sent to the room or they're not going to be given ice cream for dinner. Whereas if they clean the room without their parents asking, they're going to go out for a movie or perhaps not have to do chores the next day. So kids are already aware of this idea of actions and consequences. This wouldn't necessitate a yearly ritual of writing letters to Santa and baking cookies. So why then, what makes Santa a mythic figure then? Santa is a figure of justice in an unjust world. He's very similar to a culture hero and kind of that man with no name, of the Western tragic figure, if you will. For the entirety of the year, the world is disordered. People commit actions, some are wicked, some are good. And at the end of the year, here comes this man who, in one night, can travel the entire world on a flying sleigh pulled by reindeer, and he sets things right. He brings atonement. Things are set as they should be. Those who did good works are rewarded, and those who didn't are punished. It's a materialistic view of punishment and reward, whereas coal for the punishment and receiving presents that you wanted and asked for being the good. But that I believe is where Santa really is a mythic figure, because it also stems from this optimistic ideal that inevitably each will get their own at some point. And with the end of the year, it's kind of symbolic. At the end of the year being like the end of a life, there is this idea of a judgment and a dishing out of the reward for it. And Santa Claus very much represents that. And going off more on the idea of a gunslinger, someone who emerges from the chaos of a blustery, windy, cold North Pole, and he comes to every house, establishes cosmos again, but he cannot stay there and he retreats back. And children, you can't stay up and try to watch him or he's going to skip over your house. There's this idea of he is other, he is different, he's not of us, and that's why he can bring this justice to the chaotic world as a chaotic figure from a chaotic place and establish cosmos. That I think is the greatest contributor. But the other parallel that I saw was Santa is very almost Arthurian in a way. With Arthurian tales, you have the stories of the Knights of Camelot. Santa, you have the North Pole. You have stories about elves. You have the Will Ferrell film Elf. You have the story of the Rankin Bass film Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The idea, and these are characters within that mythicity of Santa Claus. Because it's removed from the Christian holiday, so I wouldn't say it's within the mythicity of Christmas. It's within the mythicity of Santa Claus and the subsequent legend and stories that are within that sphere, you would say. And one thing that certainly comes to mind in terms of an Arthurian parallel was the Rankin Bass film Santa Claus is Coming to Town, where Santa Claus is this boy hero who brings toys to the world where toys are forbidden, and he fights to bring happiness to all the sad children. And very much in an Arthurian parallel, he has the Winter Warlock, who's his assistant. Essentially, he acts as a Merlin figure. He provides him with magic, yeah, and that's used as the explanation of how he can travel the world in one night, why his reindeer can fly. So that definitely, there's an acknowledgement of Santa Claus being an Arthur-like figure. And finally, the biggest reason Santa Claus is mythic is, again, there's this ritual subscribed to him. The secular Christmas ritual of making lists, giving what you want, watching out, singing songs, reminding people of the coming of this figure that's going to set everything straight and correct and basically judge you for what happened over the year and either be rewarded or be punished. And it's this ritual that's carried on by generations. Children put out milk and cookies, and parents still maintain the idea of, yes, there is Santa Claus bringing you your gifts, or not bringing you gifts at all and bringing you coal as a judgment for what has happened over the entire year. So that's why I believe Santa Claus is the mythic figure. That's why I think he maintains his mythicity status, and that's the mythopoetic origins of it. This project was a lot of fun to work on. It was great for getting the Christmas spirit, and I had a great time. Thank you very much.